Okay, so this video has nothing to do with web. Let's just get that out of the way. I reached a small milestone last week, and for a change, I thought maybe why not tell you guys the story behind this channel. I'm sure you'd relate to some of the experiences that I'll share in this video, and who knows, maybe this video gives you the push that you need to do something new. So yeah, I officially became an engineer in the year 2018. On paper, I did my engineering in IT, but I barely knew anything that would help me in the real world. This wasn't even a good engineering college to begin with. The students were there just for the sake of it. All they needed was that final diploma, and unfortunately that has been the scene with 90% of the engineering candidates, at least in India. They only care about that final degree. The teachers were there just to make easy money and couldn't care less about the students. To give you some perspective, in our final year project, we have this concept of a mentor, which usually is one of these teachers. The mentor that we had ratted us out during the final presentation. So this presentation is normally undertaken by an external teacher. So someone from a different college comes in, they'll take a look at your project, try to understand it and see what it's trying to achieve, and eventually either approve it or reject it. The way they approve this project is by giving you a signature on your project journal. Our mentor, for some reason, had personal issues with my team, kept it bottled up till the very final day when this presentation was supposed to happen, and made sure that our project does not get approved. Now that I think about it, I am pretty sure that we were the only group in the final year, in the entire college by the way, who did not get any approvals. Now, we were no saints either. The project itself was a joke, but just because no one in the faculty was competent enough to point out fundamental loopholes, we were able to get through. After struggling and begging for like a couple of months, eventually everything did work out. But my point is, during engineering, I personally did not learn anything that I'm doing right now. I can point at others and say that it's their fault, but deep down I know that I didn't do shit either. But yeah, eventually I did graduate, and just like everyone else, I got a job in an MNC. Now this is again a norm here. Engineers from tier 2 and tier 3 colleges get bulk hired into these MNCs for cheap. I was put into support right away, and I wanted to do anything but that. So the client that I was working for is this big energy player in the US. This MNC was doing resource management for this organization. So all I had to do was look at the tickets, and most of the tickets were just data discrepancies. So mostly I had to check whether the resources were being added, updated and deleted correctly in the database. If not, all I had to do was run like a couple of queries, and that was about it. Over there, I also used to hear everyone talk about development, and since Angular was buzzing during that time, I desperately wanted to try it. Now I did know some basic HTML, CSS from engineering, but that was pretty much it. So I did try Angular for a month straight after my office hours, and tried asking for a role similar to that in the MNC itself. But that did not happen, so I quit and joined a small startup. Now in this startup, I learned a lot. I built quite a few projects in Angular and got a much better understanding of how web works. I also started to do some React on the side for my own personal projects. But after a while, it felt like I was repeating myself over and over again. The startup was fairly small, and none of the projects we worked on reached like a significant scale where I could learn a lot more. So I felt it was time to switch again and look for like a mid-sized organization that had some scale, but it should not be as big as an MNC. So in 2020, I switched again, and it started off well. This was almost 2 years after my graduation, so I had decent amount of experience this time. But the word experience itself is kind of funny. One of my seniors in the early days had told me this one thing about experience that I still remember to this day. He told me that there are two kinds of experienced engineers out there. Let's take 5 years for example. The first kind would actually have a good 5-year experience with consistent progress. They'll learn new skills along the way, and eventually they'll excel in their career. The other kind would have a great first year experience. Then all they have is the same experience multiplied several times. So you learn a lot in the first year, but now that you're comfortable in that position, you extend your stay there doing the same thing for so long until you realize that you have not learned anything new for the past few years. Then if you decide to make a switch, you'll quickly realize how far behind you have fallen which then puts you in a position where you can't leave the current role even if you want to. I was starting to feel like it because again I was doing the same thing over and over again. While switching jobs could have done that for me, it still does not guarantee it. So I could switch to a new role, and for the first few months it will feel like I'm learning something new. But at the same time, that might not even happen. I could be put into like a random project which is something that I've already worked on. Then again, the room for growth becomes very narrow, and that is not something that I wanted. So I thought of doing something on my own. I wanted to upskill, and to do that, I had to learn new things, and the best way to learn something new is by teaching that same thing. YouTube did not even come to my mind at that point. I thought of either microblogging on Twitter or LinkedIn, but back then Medium was also quite popular. So that's what I did. It took me time to read a lot of new concepts, apply them, and curate all the information. So it was challenging, but at the same time, not as daunting as putting out video content. So in August 2020, I put out my first Medium blog. I quickly got a hang of it and did that for a year straight. But after a year, I got bored again. I was learning a lot of new things, yes, but putting content out on Medium was not challenging anymore.
This fucking guy.
So again, I had to do something new. Starting this channel did cross my mind a couple of times in that year, but now it made a lot more sense. Obviously, there were a few barriers when I was thinking about starting this channel. I had to improve my writing primarily, so the videos on my channel, most of the content for each video has a script, and I try to follow at least 90% of it. It just brings down the recording and the editing time significantly, so yeah, I had to learn that. I also wanted the content to be all English. English is clearly not my first language. I speak like 5 different regional Indian languages, but I wanted this to be in English. While I never really had problems with English to begin with, it still felt weird though the first few times. I mean, I can do my entire content in Hindi. हिंदी में अगर करने जाऊँ तो ज़्यादा सोचने का टाइम भी नहीं लगेगा and शायद रीच भी ज़्यादा मिले. But still I wanted the content on this channel to be pure English. I also had to learn some basic editing. Also needed a decent microphone. So if you watch my first few videos, it sounds like I'm about to pass out. The sound is all messed up. I have loud background music. Every fiber of my body cringes when I go back to that video. But I did post it and I kept getting better with every upload. I still have a lot of gaps obviously and will improve on them gradually, but at least it's palatable now. So the initial growth is always slow, and it also took me about 1.5 years to get to 500 subs. But in the last 5 months, YouTube has started pushing out some of my content. So I was able to close out the balance in these last few months. So from September 2021, the day I posted my first video, till now, I did get bored quite a few times. I switched jobs, I moved cities just to experiment and see what else can be done. And it has worked out well for me, but in hindsight, now that I think about all these new things that I try to pick up, it's funny to me how much resistance I had to do it the first time. So for anyone out there who thinks they are in the same position and want to do something new, I do understand the hesitation at the beginning, but just remember that it doesn't matter. Nothing matters actually. 5 minutes after you do it, you'll forget about it and think about what's next. That's the good and the bad part about these new things. The moment only lasts for a good 5 minutes. So just go ahead and do it. There's no right time, no right moment. There's definitely no perfect mood out there that's going to make you do things. So whatever excuses you have that you're telling yourself to delay this thing, ignore those excuses and just do it. Anyway, thanks everyone for the first 1,000 subs. It's a significant milestone for me, even though it might not look like one. I had a few comments on a couple of videos about collaboration and communities. I am planning to collaborate with a few folks out there once I have a significant reach. And speaking of communities, again, once there are enough people on this channel, maybe I can create one to discuss things related to the web. I also have interests outside of web, so I do watch a lot of MMA, I listen to a lot of rock, metal music, hip-hop music. I watch a lot of memes, so maybe we can create a community for those things as well. To be honest, now that I think of it, maybe I can use Instagram to do all this. It has a great potential to build distribution, and I feel like I'm not utilizing it as much. So yeah, I'll look into that. there are a bunch of things that will happen going forward. And for that, do subscribe to the channel. Thanks a lot for helping me reach this milestone, and yep, I'll see you in the next one.